Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Alex, and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about why I switched from the Sony A7 III to the Canon R6 1 year ago, and what some of the pros and cons are, and whether or not those cons are a deal breaker for you, because this camera is so close to perfect. Not quite perfect, but so close. Now here's the best part about this video, is that Posh Detailing has invited me to their Posh Lab, where they have this very beautiful car, the AMG GT Black Series. I'm gonna be showing you around the Canon R6, how it works and what I like the most, so let's dive into that. So the first thing that drew me to switch from the Sony A7 III to the Canon R6, a couple of them are pretty obvious. The Canon R6 offers 4K 60 frames per second, and of course it only has HD 120 frames per second, but what it does have that is a step up from the Sony is that it has 10-bit color. So when you're using C-Log 3, which is now in the Canon R6, you can retain those colors and really bring back the life to the image, which to me is way more important. The second thing that I really love about the Canon R6 that is very obvious is that it has the flip out LCD screen, and it's touch screen. You don't really get that on the A7 III. You can kind of touch where you want it to focus, but some of the focus features on the Canon R6 are absolutely phenomenal. One of my favorite features about the autofocus is that it has automatic eye tracking. So again, it naturally will lock onto your eye and keep your face in focus, or any subject that you want. You can just tap on the screen and it will focus and lock onto that subject, which is pretty invaluable when you're doing, car photography or any kind of photos or videos actually where you want to track a subject, and the autofocus is really, really good. Super easy to use and customize any of the buttons on the back here. It also has this Q button that brings up pretty much anything that you would need to function really, really quickly on the back of the touch screen, which to me is invaluable. And again, in contrast to the Sony menus, it's just a little bit more simple to navigate. Another great thing about the touch LCD screen is it actually is zoomable. You can touch, pinch. It's amazing the things that you can do when you have a touch screen, and flip screen, great for vlogging, any of those kind of things. And even if you're shooting low or high, you can tilt that screen any way you want, and it actually makes making B-roll or photos so much easier. Now again, as we compare it to the Sony A7 III, this is a 20 megapixel-ish camera that is quite good in low light compared to the R5 that we're actually filming on right now. The R6 is slightly better, in my opinion, in low light than the Canon R5 is, because there's less megapixels in the sensor, so therefore those megapixels are larger and able to intake more light into the sensor. And there is a noticeable difference with the Canon R6 sensor, that it is quite good in low light, which I've been super impressed with. The ergonomics of the camera are phenomenal. It fits really, really nicely into the hand. I just love how easy this camera is to use compared to the Sony A7 III. Now what I use the camera for mostly is automotive photography and videography. I'm a hybrid shooter, so almost every time I'm out shooting a car, I'm generally flipping between photography and videography seamlessly. And that leads me into actually some of the cons of the comparison between the Sony A7 III and the R6, is that the custom dials on the R6 you can only set to photography mode, which is mind-blowing and awful and so dumb. Please, Canon, can you change that? Because I want to be able to switch with just those custom dials to my video mode. That to me was the greatest disappointment when I got the Canon R6, tried to set up my custom modes and I couldn't change it to video. That was a little bit heartbreaking for me, and may have actually been a deal breaker for me when I was buying the camera if I had have known that. But I am hoping that later on they will actually feature and put that into some of their firmware updates. In some of their firmware updates, they've also downsized to like a 4K 60 like IPB Lite is what they call it, which is kind of nice. Then you can still get the quality footage in a lighter file format. But again, that brings me to another con of the R6, is that the files when you're shooting in 4K IPB, they're quite heavy for editing in their computer. So if you are looking to get into the Canon ecosystem and some of the newer codecs, they are quite heavy. I highly recommend a computer that can handle that, namely like the Apple M1 chips or whatever beyond, if they're beyond that now. But they're awesome and they cut through the footage, no problem. I am curious, however, to see when the Sony A7 IV comes out. I think that's gonna be a really great camera for us hybrid shooters. Now, one of the last cons that I'm sure you guys are already aware of, because when this camera came out, it was all over the internet, is the overheating issue. Now, for me personally, the way that I shoot, it has not been an issue at all. I haven't been shooting long form aside from talking head stuff like this for YouTube. It does have a limit of a 30-minute record time. So if you're doing anything longer than that, keep that in mind. How I film, however, is in B-roll. So I'm doing a lot of B-roll and I have had zero issues doing some short clips here and there. I've never had any issues with it overheating. It's definitely something to keep in mind depending on the style of shooting that you're doing, but I know a lot of people that have these cameras that shoot weddings and other types of genres of photography and videography that have had zero issues with the overheating. One thing I think about often is if I had to buy only the Canon R5 or only the Canon R6, which one would I get? And honestly, I'd probably get the Canon R6. The reason for that is with the Canon R5, I actually rarely shoot in 8K RAW. The file sizes I don't really need to manage. Having 10-bit color is enough in 4K when your average person only has a 4K monitor anyway. So I find that the Canon R6 checks all the boxes for me. But the only con, the only thing that I would request to make this the perfect camera is to have those custom functions be able to switch for video. So Canon, please switch those custom buttons over to be video as well. That would make this camera absolutely perfect. We're gonna do a startup on this beautiful V8. All right, Derek, give her the beans. There you go, guys. We just had a beautiful chance to film this Mercedes-Benz AMG GT Black Series. So huge thank you to Posh Detailing for having me out to shoot this almost $500,000 car. Guys, that's insane. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below of if you like the R6, if you're a Sony person. I'll just leave something down there. Let me know what you think of the video. Go check out Posh Detailing. They've got their own YouTube channel. They work on some of the most amazing cars in Edmonton and in Calgary, so check them out on YouTube. And if you want any PPF wraps, clean your car, just want to hang out with some cool guys, go check them out too. But otherwise, thanks guys so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is getting my foundation layer with this. We're going to kind of paint a streak behind the car, going around the car at about the same level, because we just want it to be a nice clean line